So Joti's staying with us for this session, and Chris is going to come and take over. And we've got Alexei Sayle, we've got Hannah Sayle, Nina Schild, and of course Joti.
When Sean says I'm coming up to take over, yes, we're going to take over the world, aren't we, comrades? Starting from today. Alexei's in the loo at the minute, if you're wondering where he is. So let me just make one or two announcements then while we await Alexei's. Well, Tayo Aluka, for those of you that come up, Alexei. Yeah, give him a round of applause because as he. I thought he was going to run all the way, Alexei, and then stop. You let me down, mate. I thought he was kind of like running onto Wembley Stadium.
It's like the BAFTAs, where if you make your walk as long as possible, you get more and more.
Yeah, indeed. But they kind of like peter out of it, you know. So anyway, yeah, obviously. Anyway, no, I was just going to make a few quick announcements. Tayo Aluka, those of you who were here last night will have heard what an absolutely stunning performance it was, and he's got some flyers with details of other live performances that he's doing around about the country. I don't know, I think, where are they, Tayo? Are they just on people's tables? Or if you see Tayo, there he is. If you want the details of his gigs, you can get them from him. Just another quick call out for Tusk, who have got their stall in the alcove there, as have the Workers' Party. The campaign badges, if you want any T-shirts or... Oh, yeah, well, I'm going to do him in a minute, don't worry. Yeah, he's on my list. Give me a chance, comrade. Karl Marx money boxes, they're brilliant. Karl, maybe, what a fantastic thing that would be to have on your mantelpiece. Anyway, yeah. And, of course, Lee Garrett. In fact, I've been told that Sean has agreed with Lee to give him a quick couple of minutes. But I'm going to give you that at the end, or shall we do it now? Let's have a show of hands. Who wants to hear about Lee's book now? Please show. Those who don't want to hear about Lee's book. Did somebody call for a card vote? Lee, come on, man. Come and give us a quick review of your book, comrade. You've got to run like Alexei, mate. If you're going to go that way, watch the cables. Because you might disconnect us. I'll watch the table, yeah. Lee Garrett, comrades. Lee Garrett.
Thank you very much. Yes, so very briefly, I was a Corbynista. I had the fortune or misfortune to be in Derby North. So what we saw that happened had an extra frisson, I suppose, with Chris in as my MP. So, yeah, I'm just looking for what I've scribbled down here. Just bear with me one sec. So, yeah, so my book, I think, which is this over there, was born out of this frustration. What was the frustration about? It was a few things, really. It was a frustration about the old manufactured anti-Semitism crisis, definitely. It was a frustration with the disgusting, virtuousness of the political right of the party. It was also just a frustration with the outright lies that were told. So it's always good to remind ourselves, isn't it? So this is what Chris said in the Sheffield Momentum meeting. Just read it briefly. The party that has more to stand up to racism is now being demonised as a racist, bigoted party. I've got to say, I think our party's response has been partly responsible for that, because in my opinion, we've backed off too much, we've given too much ground, we've been too apologetic. Now that's what Chris said. There were other things that happened, of course, but that started the things in my eyes that spiraled out of control. That just led to lies, to lies being told enough until it became the truth. So one of the lies, of course, was that Chris is a racist, which is an obvious outright lie, and we shouldn't be afraid to say that. All these people who are branded as racist, Ken Livingstone, Jackie, we should have contempt, I think, for these people who spread those lies. What lies? So another lie. Sometimes the lies could be an omission of the truth, so which is a slightly more subtle kind of, right? So when they talk about Louisiana Berger, they talk about it you know, the narrative was this young Jewish woman who's having to have an escort to the Labour conference because of these vicious attacks on her. They all admitted the fact, obviously people were arrested, they always admitted the very obvious and pertinent fact that the people arrested for it were Nazis. Not one of them was connected to the Labour Party. I mean, you know, it was, there was one after another of these. You know, you'd have a panorama show where the witnesses on, you know, a programme that probably had a lot of time for, a lot of respect for, were, you only had to dig into them for a little while. You had Ella Rose, of course, who Jackie's talked about, one of the main witnesses who threatened to take, you know, who had dealings with, you know, Israeli spy. It's all on Al Jazeera, it's all out there. You had Professor Ellen Johnson, who was in pay of an Israeli organisation. And you had Louise Ellman, of course, who has recently come to the Labour Party, who was given ample opportunity by the programme to claim that anti-Semites taken over a branch. It was never mentioned, the fact that it was always political. It was always political. So, yeah, frustration with these lies. A frustration with a lie that there was an existential threat to the British Jewish community, and that to question Zionism was in fact to be an anti-Semite. So, if you want to get wound up and read a book in the evening that's not going to send you to sleep, I recommend this. It's also, hopefully, you know, it did me a little bit of good getting out my frustration about to put it on pen and paper, but hopefully at the back of the book I've got the historical record of the letters that the Labour Party sent, so hopefully they'll be there for posterity. So yes, thank you very much. It's down to people in this hall, people watching that this book's had any traction at all, because it's been difficult to get stopped and difficult to get out there. But thank you, comrades, and thank you for any support you might give me.
Thanks, Lee. So if you've not bought his book, please buy it there. It's got plenty of copies. And, yeah, as you say, if you want to get wound up, buy his book. If I give a shout-out for the Workers' Party, but they've got a stall over there as well, so please go and see them if you don't mind. Right, we're going to go into this discussion now. So we're going to do it in a slightly different way. It's going to be more of a kind of panel discussion. And then obviously we want to bring in yourselves in relation to what your thoughts are about whether we should start the process to register as a political party. And I know various people have got different views on it. I think we're all agreed, well, the vast majority of us anyway, that there's no real future for the Labour Party. It is broken, and maybe it always has been, but it certainly isn't an organisation that's going to do very much to challenge the neoliberal status quo, let alone challenge imperialism. And, you know, we're seeing a situation where there's 14 million people in poverty, as we know. Precarious employment is endemic throughout the land. We have a massive housing crisis. People are dying literally on the streets because they can't get a decent accommodation or any accommodation. We see the National Health Service about to go into the hands of the corporate sector. There are major, major problems, and we do need to stand up to them. But is another political party the right way to go? And on our panel, our esteemed panel, comrades, we have Alexei Sayle. Hey. Alexei has had a really tortuous journey to get here because there is a strike, a dispute with our comrades in the RMT. He's not broken the strike, but he's managed to find a way of getting here. But he had to go right up past Nottingham, up to Grantham, and get another train and come down here. So such is a commitment to be here to contribute to the discussion. So thanks, Alexei, for being here. Hannah Sell, we have from the Socialist Party. Hannah, are you the deputy leader of the...
the General Secretary.
The General Secretary, good Lord, even more esteemed. Big round of applause. Nina Schild, have I pronounced the surname correctly?
It was perfect.
Not bad, great, right, okay. Nina, fantastic, the German Socialist Party. It was obviously created in Germany. People frustrated with the SPD going the way really of the Labour Party, kind of embracing neoliberalism and striking out and creating an alternative platform. A platform actually I know they had some setbacks in the recent elections in Germany, but they still have a parliamentary representation. Of course, they have the benefits of proportional representation there, which does make it considerably easier. But anyway, we're delighted to have Nina to hear her insights. And last but by no means least is the deputy leader. Oh, yes, and a round of applause. Really sorry, I want to host I am. Big round of applause, yeah, for Nina. Sorry about that. I thought the applause was just the very mention of even looking at you, Joti, but it was for Nina. But I'm sure people are very appreciative of your appearance here as well. Joti says, digging the hole even deeper. Joti is the deputy leader of the Workers' Party, and I've known Joti for probably about a year or so now, probably, and campaigned alongside her in the battle in Spain. A very impressive comrade, and I'm sure she will have thoughts, obviously, on this issue that we're going to be discussing today. So, let's sort of kick off then, maybe go down the line. Alexei, let me kick off because you're closest to me. I mean, I know you've spoken a bit about this on your podcast and so on. If people haven't heard his podcast, by the way, comrades, it's brilliant. And in fact, Alexei has a shout out on his podcast recently. Although he did say I was in great shape. He said, great guy, he's in great shape, he's a vegan, he's in great shape, he's over 70, I'm only 60, bloody fine. You want about? So next week he's going to be saying, I got that wrong, he's not in great shape, he's looking bloody terrible. Actually, this vegan diet's no good, is it? But no, I think you've talked, Alexei, about a nice party. We need a nice party.
Yeah.
But you've also, I think, talked about a sort of maybe a federated structure. I'm sure I've heard you say that. Yeah. So maybe say a little bit about that.
Okay.
What's your thoughts?
Yeah. It's good to be here. And it's already been a kind of an interesting learning experience for me. I mean, as I said when I interviewed Jeremy Corbyn on my podcast, damn you, Jeff, for getting me interested in this shit. I spent many happy years during, the 80s and 90s just taking the piss out of everybody, really, and the left particularly and the right. And, it was a happy time for me. Obviously, the election of Jeremy Corbyn to the leadership of the Labour Party gave me, just made me more interested in the possibility that the Labour Party could be a kind of a political change and a force for good. That hope was obviously dashed, but it's left me with a kind of more. My job, and I have to say that the sacred role of the comedian, and I think there is a. The politically engaged comedian there is, and it's a kind of a character that appears throughout history in a way, is the kind of the court jester, the commedia dell'arte, the figure who mocks everything really and speaks. It's that kind of hackneyed phrase, speaks truth to power. But I also speak Spanish to chickens. But so that is essentially my role. My role is not ultimately to be engaged, but to sit and mock everybody. Nevertheless, I am more drawn towards the idea of political engagement, and it's made me think a lot about it. It does seem to me that the Labour Party, as much as I understand it, there is no possibility of it ever making the same mistake again and falling back to the hands of anybody least bit left wing. So that is clearly not a possibility. But if we consider that the possibility of forming a new left-wing force, that we have to admit that the left has been spectacularly bad at, forming anything, that the Labour Party has existed and people have been drawn to the Labour Party because it seems the best of the worst options, and that if a new party, a new group is to be formed, then it also needs to look very seriously at the modes of of operating that the left has traditionally have, and really that there has to go a lot. You can't do the same. You can't have the same modes of organisation that the left. And you know, my parents are in the CP, and I have obviously you know, a deep experience of organisations to the left of the point. I do think that if you are going to make those decisions, and there was an interesting discussion that I was listening to in the green room about, to give an example, obviously I have existed in the centre of corporate media. That I've worked largely for the BBC, Channel 4, ITV. I've written for most major newspapers over my career. That, for example, one of the you know, so I have an area of expertise there, that if you are going to have a new left-wing party, that you would have to do media in a way that has not been done before. The one thing that I questioned Jeremy on my podcast was the appointment of Seamus Milne as head of communications, who could seem catastrophic, really, and that constantly that you have, that if you do a left-wing party, you would both have to concentrate on alternative media, but there is a way to also, I think I do believe that there is a way that you could also make a much better appeal to, you know, corporate media, which has never been tried before. You have to, for instance, have a kind of refutation unit who would instantly respond to any smear, any lie. Right there, right then, the Labour Party always seemed to be extraordinarily dopey at replying to attacks. You would also have to, as I was been discussing this with Chris before, never back down, never say sorry, never try and appease those views. Those pressure groups, you know, the Board of Deputies, or, you know, but you also, you know, you never, because you can't appease bullies, and these are bullies, and they will never back down. It seemed just insane that attempt was made to kind of somehow welcome on board, because you always just encourage them to attack you more. I think that also you'd have to invent, you know, like they make up these kind of, you know, like the institute, you know, the Taxpayers Federation, for instance, is like, I mean, it's no more a fucking Taxpayers Federation than the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism is a campaign against anti-Semitism. These are just right-wing lobby groups. And I think that the left should do that as well. The left should, you know, focus, you know, found all these kind of campaigns for this, that, or the other, you know, and actually use them. And I would say that there are, that to write off corporate media, there are a lot of people inside the BBC and inside that want to help, but they're frightened at the moment. They get no support, and the only way that if you adopt the tactics of the Israeli lobby, for example, and instantly bombard them when something that you approve of appears, or when something you disapprove of appears, then those people will are just waiting for a chance to lift their heads above the parapet. They're not many, but there are people there. I know there are. And, you know, that's another thing that you need to do. You know, you cannot, I mean, just restricting myself to media for the moment, you cannot wage a campaign for public opinion in the way that you have always done, I think. Thank you.
Is that, though... Yes, give him a round of applause. Is that though a yes or a no, do you think, to a new political party, whether it be on a federated or a national thing? I know you were saying it's been spectacularly unsuccessful to create an alternative to Labour. Do you think there's scope for something?
Yeah, I think that if you can take on, you know, and I think there are, you can see particularly with young people who have fresh attitudes, if you can, yeah, I think that, yeah, I don't know how you would do it. I'm not, you know, this is not my area of expertise, but I think those lessons are out there to be learned. If you take on board those lessons, then yeah, I think a new party could work, I think, but you know.
Well, okay, well, thanks for that. Well, I mean, let's move then to Hannah. I mean, and obviously you were a new party a while ago, but you've been around a while. And many of you were in the Labour Party, I think. I mean, its origins were militant, wasn't it, inside the Labour Party? I remember that was one of the earlier witch hunts, of course, but it's nowhere near as bad as what this is. I mean, that was bad enough. I remember Eric Heffer walking off the when Kinnock made his infamous speech about Liverpool. and endorsing loads of lies, etc. But, I mean, what's your thoughts then, Hannah, about whether there should be a process to register as a new party, or do you think people should rally behind? What's your thoughts?
Okay.
Give us the benefit your...
I mean, first of all, yes, I was part of the Labour Party once. I was actually on the executive of the Labour Party when I was 17 as the last representative of the Labour Party Socialist before it was shut down in that witch hunt. But I fully agree, Chris, bad as the witch hunt we had was, it is nothing compared to what a lot of you who've been in the Labour Party have suffered in the recent period. But I do think, I'm very happy to have been invited to speak here today. Obviously, whether you decide to register as a political party is a decision for you in Resist. But to give my thoughts on it, I think it's really good that you're discussing this issue and not evading it. Because at the moment, a lot of people on the left are evading it because it just seems too difficult. But I think we have to confront it. The Socialist Party is part of the Trade Unionist and Socialist Coalition. That was originally founded, we were involved, but founded particularly by Bob Crow, the late great militant leader of the RMT, the Transport Workers Union. And today, Tusk is a federation. Yeah, Bob deserves a clap, absolutely. Today, Tusk is a federation involving the RMT backing us officially, the Socialist Party, Resist take part. We also have a growing number of individual members of trade union executives. United Bakers Union have individuals in a personal capacity, but it's not unconnected to what is taking place in the Labour Party steering committee. And we exist to provide a banner to contest elections. So it's modest, but this May we were able, with Resist, take part to stand over 300 candidates on an anti-cuts basis in the local elections. And we want to do more next May. And I do think elections really matter. Let's be clear, this is not the same as the Blairite period. We've got the Blairites back in charge of the Labour Party with an iron grip on the machine. That was in the 1990s. That was at a time when socialist ideas to some degree, despite all of our efforts, if we were old enough to be around, were marginalised. Globally, the capitalists thought they won, that their system was the only way of running. And it's not like that today. I don't know if how many of you saw in July, there was an opinion poll done by the Institute of Economic Affairs. They described themselves as the original Thatcherite think tank. And they found that 67% of 16 to 34-year-olds want to live in a socialist economic system. Yeah. 3/4 of them blame capitalism for climate change. 78% blame them for the housing crisis. 75% think socialism is a good idea but has failed because it was badly done in the past. Young people in this country are overwhelmingly left-leaning because of their experience of capitalism and this system. But at the moment, they've got no electoral voice at all. Now, we don't want to go over the history of what's happened in the Labour Party in the recent period, but I would just say many of those young people first found out about some concept of socialism because Jeremy was leader of the Labour Party. He did politicise a generation, but he's been defeated. Corbynism has been defeated, and I don't think that was ordained. Chris certainly was fighting to transform the Labour Party, to properly reselect MPs, to democratise it, to get the Blairites out. I'm sure many of you were. But unfortunately, at the top, the strategy of Jeremy and John and others was to try and find a way to get unity right, to compromise, and it resulted in that you were talking about, of not rebutting the lies to the media or anywhere else. We do not win like that, and no holds bar fight needed, but we didn't have it, and as a result of that, we are now left without a political voice. Now, that's not going to stop movements. We're seeing movements, the Black Lives Matter movement, the Palestinian movement. There's going to be huge protests on the question of the environment around COP26. There are a growing number of strikes. One of them stopped one of our speakers getting to the meeting day. People are struggling, and all of us as socialists should be part of all of those movements and building them. But I think it's an abdication of responsibility to say we just concentrate on the movement, we don't bother standing in elections. Because otherwise, who is fighting for those movements in the council chambers? Who's fighting for those movements in Parliament? I mean, in the Socialist Party, we don't think we're going to achieve socialism just by voting it through Parliament. If you look at the sabotage that Jeremy faced as leader of the opposition, you can only imagine what they do to a socialist government trying to act in the interests of the working class, we could win, but that would rely on the power of working class people, the ones in the end who make the profits for the capitalist class. So absolutely, electoral politics on its own is not enough, but it's a crucial element in the struggle. And we also think it's a bit of an abdication to say, well, let's wait for them to throw something up, because history doesn't work like that. You've got to be pioneers who start, who fight for something. Even if you look back at the history of the foundation of the Labour Party, and yeah, there were always pro-capitalist elements there from the very beginning, but by workers, that was their attempt to found their own party. It was small in the beginning. The LRC conference in 1900 that founded it, Labour Representation Committee, had 129 delegates. They got 1% of the vote in the general election. They started small, but they fought and they succeeded in making breakthroughs. And even as a minority, they moved history forward. You could say their first victory, I know this is ancient history, but was the 1906 general election. Not because they won, they got 20-odd MPs elected. But the Liberals, the incoming government, were forced to repeal the vicious anti-trade union laws because they could feel the hot breath of the working class in this new party that was being built. So we think we do need to start doing the same thing again. Actually, in this era of capitalist crisis, who knows? Quite quickly. Again, never mind what happened later. Syriza in Greece, when it got to power, but that was a radical left party on less than 5% of the vote, and 6 years later it won a general election. The problem is what it did after that. But nonetheless, we can make breakthroughs if we start. We think a particular strength of Tusk, and by the way, that was also true about the LRC, it was a small number of delegates, but they represented 500,000 trade unionists, so they weren't nothing. But one of the strengths of Tusk is we do focus on the trade unions, on trade union members, not only, lots of community campaigns as well, but we think that is important going forward, and you can see potential. The fact the Bakers Union have disaffiliated, but correctly said that doesn't mean we're going to be unpolitical, we're going to be more political. The fact that Sharon Graham, and you might have different views on her, but the new Unite General Secretary is saying we want a workers' politics, and we are not going to give money to Labour candidates who implement cuts. That's a bit of a sign of the pressure that's coming. So in terms of what we do, in our view, a big strength of Tusk is that it is a coalition, it's an umbrella. And what that means is we agree on the basics. We're standing council elections, we all agree if we get elected, we will not vote for Tory austerity, we will fight for our local communities. But we can have different views on loads of other stuff. We come together and we stand together in elections. And by the way, I just happened to pick this up for the Tusk stall. This is from a by-election that just happened in Nottingham. But its candidate is a member of the Socialist Party. She's got a Socialist Party logo on it. She's got stuff about the Socialist Party on it. But it's under the Tusk umbrella. Resist can do the same thing. Other forces can do the same thing. And that allows not just all of us who are long-standing, probably mainly political activists, but new Black Lives Matter campaigners, people fighting climate change, all kinds of different activists to come together and to work together on the electoral plane. So I suppose in conclusion, what I'd say is it's entirely up to you whether you register Resist. Actually, for historical reasons, pre-Tusk, we're registered, we're on the, but we stand under the banner of Tusk. But I would encourage you, definitely, you're already doing it, but continuing helping to build in the political and electoral arena as part of your work of building movements. I would say at this stage, Tusk is the best means of doing that. It's not the finished article, but it's a step in the direction of a new party, because it doesn't work for any group of people, whether it's us in the Socialist Party or you in Resist or anyone else, to just come and say, we are the alternative, we've decided. We need to build a new mass party in this country, and that means working together and collaborating, and most importantly, involving wider sections of working class people. So I'll leave it there.
Thanks a lot, Hannah. I mean, that's really interesting. And just to sort of pick up, though, on the point that Alexei was touching on, because he's saying that, the left has tried to launch alternative parties and we've been spectacularly unsuccessful. I mean, obviously, the Socialist Party's been around a while. It's not made the cut through. It hasn't sort of obviously secured any parliamentary seats. I don't know if you've got many councillors elected. Well, two things really. What would you say is the reason for that? And do you think we're in new territory now, given that we've seen the sort of left experiment spectacularly crash and burn inside the Labour Party, and that we might therefore be in a new zeitgeist?
Yes, I do. I think that if you look back at what Tusk was doing pre-Jeremy Corbyn, it was modest, but we had some councillors. We stood on quite a broad basis in the 2015 general election. We were getting quite a bit of momentum. But Jeremy's election as leader of the Labour Party, of course, changed it, because there was a chance to transform Labour into a left party, and we supported that. And actually in the Socialist Party, we said we're willing to affiliate to the Labour Party to help in that battle. That wasn't taken up, but we wanted to be able to assist in that. But now it's a new era, and you've got this combination of a big crisis in society, a lot of people looking to the left, Labour only crowing about there will never be a Jeremy Corbyn figure elected again as a result of the Labour Party conference. I think there's a chance to step into a vacuum here, and collectively we can make some progress.
Yeah, I think... Sorry.
Oh, sorry, no. Sorry,
In a way, I mean, I think the game, in a sense, has changed. Even you, I'd spent, my career being cynical and, taking the piss when I saw to what extent, when it was borne in on me after the Corbyn experiment, to what phenomenal extent the game is rigged, the way our democracy is a complete kind of fallacy. Just how entirely it is a kind of just empty going through the motions. I think that is a new reality which a lot of people have, particularly the young, I think, have realised, and that is what is different. But you have to, and if the left can take advantage of that, then there will be success, or if not.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Not very inspiring, was it? But I'm sorry, I'm terrible in speeches. I'm always like, if you really... I think that there is definitely a new reality. I personally, my lived experience, I was, even being part of the corporate media, I was extraordinarily shocked at how the lies, I think there are ways to counteract that, but as I said before, but it is an amazing time we're living in.
Well, talking of amazing times and new beginnings, etc., I mean, what we saw, if we move on to Nina now, I mean, you've gone through a process, obviously, in Germany. Clearly, there was dissatisfaction with the SPD. You grasped that nettle, and you struck out on your own, and you've had some substantial electoral success. Some setbacks in the election last time, but I think you've still got, is it 29 or 39 members of Parliament?
Yes.
Which,
certainly.
Wouldn't that be great if we had people with a kind of socialist platform, which is the sort of things that we could achieve, albeit not in power, but I think there's things that can still be achieved. And indeed, we did achieve things, actually, in the early days of Jeremy, forced the government back on a number of occasions by, changing the terms of the debate. And the fact that Jeremy rejected austerity, that absolutely changed the terms of the debate, didn't it? And as Hannah said, it kind of, took head on this kind of, toxification of the word socialism by actually embracing it, being proud of it, and definitely, I think, changed the terms of the debate. We've lost that, obviously, in the Labour Party, but that movement, as I was saying yesterday, I mean, those people haven't sort of disappeared, as it were. But in Germany, you grasped that nettle, you stuck out on your own, you stood. So where are we with Die Linke? And, just tell us about the process. How did that happen? And just give us the benefit of your thoughts, Nina. Yeah.
Maybe I give you first the answer of your question, if you should be, or if you need a political socialist left party in the parliament or not, and then I tell you why I come to this answer. So my answer is you definitely need one, for sure. How happened this in Germany? The Linke was founded in 2007 as a reaction, like Chris said, for the neoliberal politics of our socialist party, or not socialist party, Labour Party, what's called the SPD. So they have the social in the name, but they are not. We write the S usually as a dollar sign. really. Yeah, they changed the welfare aid like this, that a lot of people have to suffer poverty or are forced to work under really bad conditions and bad jobs. So make capitalism work like this. And yeah, we thought this is so unsocial that we founded the Left Party. To this time, political, so I cannot tell you how happened this exactly. I was to this time a union member, so I was a fighter on the streets, more or less. And then I realized that I cannot do nothing on the streets without the help of the parliament and the politicians who make the laws for us like this, that we can reach something. Because the right side changed the laws for the unions like this, that they really cannot say anything. So I realized the street cannot reach nothing without the parliament. And the parliament can reach nothing without the street, as you also know. So it has also always go together. Sorry for my bad English, you understand. Yeah. So,
Let me, while you're thinking, Nina, about your next move in terms of your thoughts in relation to where we go. I've just been told that we've got Max Blumenthal on the line. We were hoping to bring in Max earlier on today, but obviously the time zone difference made that, well, it would have meant Max getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning. And limited, comrades, but, you know, he had a late night the day before and he was speaking at a support in Assange. To Max has been a great supporter of ourselves. People have seen him on the Resistance TV more than a few times. And so perhaps we get Max on the screen. And Max, I hope you can hear me, Max. We're asking you to talk about neoliberalism and imperialism. And I just thought that maybe you could touch on that, but also tell us about the moves in the States to create a third party. I know Jimmy Dore is very supportive of that, as are a number of other prominent campaigners, socialists in the States, and are very critical of the so-called squad, or the fraud squad, who fulfil the role of, fulfil the same role, I suppose, as the socialist campaign group in this country, where they give people false hope and sort of shepherd them into the Labour Party here in the United States, shepherd them into supporting the Democrats and, as it were, sort of people. So but tell us, Max, your thoughts about the potential for a third party in the States and how that might impact and why it's needed to address things like the problems of neoliberalism. And he's got his cat.
I got to get this cat out of the room and then I'm going to answer your question. So, sorry, I had a cat-related disaster. All right, how's everyone?
Max, can I just say you didn't need to win over the audience. You've already got a lot of support, but with that move, you've really won over any doubting Thomases. So.
Well, next I'll bring my baby up here. So, you know, if anyone doesn't like me yet. Yeah, I'm not an early riser. I'm not really ready to resist until the late afternoon. So I will pretty much submit to anything in the morning. And as you mentioned, we did have a late night here. We had an event for Julian Assange with John Kiriakou, Lee Cam, we had Randy Credico, a lot of other people who are preparing for the extradition, possible extradition. Julian Assange, there's going to be a ruling any day. And before I get to your question, I just wanted to provide an update on something related to the Assange case, which is what just happened with the Venezuelan diplomat named Alexei Sayle. Alexei Sayle was kidnapped in Cape Verde on his way from Iran. His flight had touched down to refuel, and he was kidnapped under orders from the United States. Because Alexei Sayle was going around the world signing deals on behalf of the Venezuelan government to provide food for his people and equipment to provide for Venezuela's free housing mission, which has housed 3 million families. And this is considered by the U.S. to be a violation of U.S. sanctions because, as we all know, the U.S. has put Venezuela under siege. So Saab was arrested, falsely charged with money laundering. No red notice was issued by Interpol, and he was subsequently held incommunicado by CIA officers, tortured, and they demanded that he basically provide the information that the U.S. needs so that they can stop Venezuela from importing goods and tighten the sanctions. And yesterday, Alexei was extradited from Cape Verde, kidnapped, a non-U.S. citizen, and brought to a federal court and prison in Florida. So this is a very disturbing precedent because the United States has been acting as though it can enforce the law on non-U.S. citizens who violated sanctions or who embarrassed the national security state, as Australian citizen Julian Assange did. And it sets a disturbing precedent for Venezuela, but also for Julian Assange. I just wanted to alert everyone to the case of Alex Saab. He's someone that all anti-imperialists should be focusing on right now. And of course, as you mentioned, Chris, the squad is not focusing on these issues. They're not saying anything about the key issues that concern us anti-imperialists, or those of us who are fighting neoliberal capitalism in our own societies. They play the role of sheepdogs to kind of bring people into the party. They use very extreme language. They talk about fighting colonialism or fighting white supremacy. But at the end of the day, they line up with the author of the crime bill in the United States, Joe Biden, and Nancy Pelosi. And they've created this void where there are these major issues that concern workers or which concern foreign policy in the U.S. that neither party really will address, particularly the Democrats are hostile to. And then you have sort of opportunistic, pseudo-populist Republicans, right-wing Republicans, who will pay lip service. And many people are turning to Jimmy Dore. Most of you know him. He's a very popular kind of YouTube podcast host, influencer, who speaks a real populist language. One of his heroes is the deep Southern populist Huey Long. And he's winning over people who were previously not even interested in politics in the United States. But where can this go in the U.S. system? We don't have a parliamentary system. There is really no space for the Green Party in U.S. Congress. How is it possible in this era of campaign finance where you have to be able to raise millions to win just a seat in the House? You have multi-million-dollar city council elections. Third-party candidates are pretty much blocked in the United States. And I also attribute Russiagate, the hysteria around Russian meddling, to the deliberate I wouldn't call it dismantling, but weakening of the Green Party. You had someone, Jill Stein, who was a committed anti-imperialist. She went to RT's 10th anniversary, and her intention there was to try to work on building better ties with a fellow nuclear-armed power. And she was accused of colluding with Putin. She was placed under investigation by the Senate Intelligence Committee, demonized in U.S. media, and the Green Party was subsequently leader. And the person they nominated after her was someone who had supported the dirty war on Syria, who believed in Russiagate, and who wanted to kind of capitulate before the Democratic Party. So it's really disturbing, actually, when you see the protests starting to erupt in U.S. cities against vaccine passports, and you look at who's in the protests. They're very diverse. Every kind of person is there. They're not necessarily right-wing in U.S. cities like New York, and they have no leadership. And the Democratic Party is hostile. The Assistant Secretary of Transportation on Thursday went on ABC News here and blamed the unvaccinated for the supply line catastrophe in the United States. So that's where the Democratic Party is. Many of these politically homeless, and there is no party for them. They've been pushed out of their jobs. Many of them are healthcare workers, bus drivers, they work in schools. Some of them are vaccinated, but they feel like they're being intimidated by their bosses in a tight job market. So it's another sort of, I mean, this is a class war we're talking about, and it's another opportunity that I think the left is missing in the United States, but it's also because we really have we have such a hard time finding any elected leadership here that doesn't come under the control of the Democratic Party. And finally, I would just kind of point to what happens when you join the Democratic Party and go into an elected position. You look at someone like Ilhan Omar, who is a representative from Minnesota. She comes from a Somali immigrant community that was under heavy FBI surveillance, heavy surveillance from our security state. She spoke a very strongly anti-imperialist language when she came into office. She spoke up against the assault on Venezuela, which was very impressive for a young member of Congress, and that has gone out the door. And she's now sort of emerging and being cultivated as a social media celebrity, and you can see party leadership turning her into kind of giving her a level of fame she never thought she could imagine. And she recently declared that her hero, in an interview with, I forget who it was in the UK, Peston maybe, she said that her hero was Margaret Thatcher because she admires strong women. So you can see just the complete evaporation of the critical capacity of someone after just a few years in an elected position in the Democratic Party. So I think a huge opportunity is being missed in the United States. Also, with all of the economic woes, millions of people are still on the verge of eviction here, and many people have not recovered their jobs since the pandemic. The moment is coming where a general strike will be necessary.
Is that then what you're saying, Max? The way to resist the States then isn't realistic to create a third party, that resistance to be successful needs to be through the labour movement then, through a general strike? Is that what you're saying?
I think the people, that's a great question, Chris, and I think the people that I know who are the most effective organizers are working through what's left of the labor movement and trying to recover the old legacy of the labor movement before you saw it kind of emerge as sort of intermediary between the management and workers, negotiating on behalf of management. Something you saw with the Auto Workers Union, which participated in the controlled demolition of Detroit. But we're seeing among workers right now, and this relates to the COVID issue, which makes it very hard to discern what's taking place because the media doesn't like to report on this. But there have been borderline wildcat strikes, particularly among the pilots union, the airline pilots union, the air traffic controllers, and those involved in the transportation sector, who feel abandoned by union leadership on the issue of vaccine mandates. And the pilots at Southwest Airlines actually managed to shut down over 2,000 flights last week. And of course, the airline bosses who are catering to the Biden administration said, oh, well, this was because of weather and some people didn't show up. But then Amtrak, our national train company, which is consistently underfunded, started to have lines go down. And Amtrak started to say, oh, this was just due to, major scheduling problems. And the excuses kept pouring, but you started to notice the patterns. And this week, United Airlines has, I think, given way on its vaccine mandate. But it's really workers who are already fed up, and they're being told after getting infected with COVID and doing their part during the pandemic, reduced flights, reduced work, reduced pay, and now they're being told that they have to cave to a government mandate or lose their job and benefits. They're actually standing up without the permission of their union boss. So in a kind of way that they are forming sort of a third party, I don't know what to call it, where they're acting outside of any established political leadership, actually having an effect. But my fear, and I know this is happening in Europe, is that only the right wing will speak on their behalf. We can get into why the left has taken this position on the COVID issue, but the fact is that only the right wing is speaking up for them, trying to co-opt them, and so the right is getting stronger in this moment on a very opportunistic basis.
Well, thanks very much indeed for joining the discussion, Max. We appreciate it. I hope you can hang fire for a little bit and listen and maybe contribute to some of the discussions from the floor. I'm just going to ask Joti Brar, who is the Deputy Leader of the Workers' Party, to speak next. The Workers' Party was established, what, about a year or so ago now, was it?
Getting on for 2 years.
Nearly 2 years, blimey, you're veterans. And, I mean, as you know, we campaigned alongside of us, many of us in the Resist movement, alongside Joti and others of the Workers' Party in the Batley and Spen by-election. Nearly caused an upset. It was an incredible thing, I've got to say. It really was. And it reminded me, the buzz, the atmosphere, was very much like the 2017 election campaign in Derby North, where, you know, such a positive atmosphere, the people that we met on the doorstep were really, really supportive, particularly in the Kashmiri community. It was just astonishing. It really was. I'd never seen anything like it. I really thought Georgia was going to go on and win it. Sadly, didn't quite get over the line, as we know. It was still a significant result. More than, say, the deposit. I think it was about 23%, wasn't it, of the vote. Obviously, there's no prizes for coming second, as we know, but nevertheless, it was, I think, a significant moment. And since then, the Workers' Party has created a successful, vibrant branch up there, and you've got branches all over the country. And obviously, we're interested in your thoughts today, Joti, on what you think we should do, whether we should start to register or just carry on as a movement and continue to collaborate. One thing I think, even if we do register as a movement, I would certainly argue, is that we would have to most certainly continue to collaborate with the Workers' Party and with the Socialist Party. And that's got to be an absolute prerequisite, because it can't be our way or the highway, because that's just doomed to fail. But Joti, tell us your thoughts.
Thanks very much, Chris, and thank you again, guys, for having me. You know, all my life, all my conscious thinking life, I heard people say, we've got to unify the left. Unify the left. But what does it mean? When I was young, it meant was join the Labour Party. Now, I have an advantage over a lot of people who got very enthused by the Corbyn project. I was excited to see a wave of socialist enthusiasm sweeping the country, for sure. But I come from a family, I'm a second generation imperialist, a second generation socialist. I was brought up in the knowledge that the Labour Party was an imperialist party from its very foundation. And if you want proof of that, there's plenty of memoirs from the time. I've just been reading very recently a beautiful book called Pioneering Days by a socialist from Glasgow, a working class steel worker at the turn of the century and in the early decades of the 20th century, called Thomas Bell. And he describes the Labour Party people up in Glasgow as being very anti-working class in those days. So we have to understand our history if we don't want to, comrades, because I think one of the problems we get into is everybody wants to rebuild the old Labour Party, but the old Labour Party had a logic of its own that led us to this point here. I don't want to spend another 120 years on a doomed project because I haven't understood the first one was never going to deliver socialism for the working class. So, you know, nothing in my years of being active in the movement, 25, 30 years now, I've been in the working class movement, nothing has caused me to revise my opinion of what I learned when I was young. It's only been confirmed by all my experiences. But as I said, I was happy to see that wave of enthusiasm, to see how Jeremy Corbyn's leadership campaign inspired people. That's great. We need that enthusiasm for socialism, for change, that ability to mobilise people into action. I would have seen him getting elected, not because I think he could have enacted all the policies he said he wanted to enact, but because the working class would have seen that he couldn't and what were the forces that were stopping him. And that's a very important lesson. What Alexei said, he learned that lesson watching Jeremy Corbyn. Lesson of how rigged the process is, how the state keeps control, such tight control. You know, who is the Prime Minister actually? It's like when Barack Obama was elected and we were all so excited, a black man in the House. Is this the end of racism in the United States? No, the police abuse of black people, deportations of immigrants accelerated under Obama. You have to understand it's the system and the person who fronts for the system. So it's not how it played out. Jeremy was elected. We had to learn the lesson another way on the nature of the Labour Party as we watched that machinery work with the state and with the media to destroy Jeremy's leadership and scupper his electoral chances. But either way, we end up in the same place, don't we? It's now perfectly clear to all sincere and thinking people that the Labour Party is an imperialist establishment party. It can't be made to serve the people. It will never be a vehicle for socialism. So that dream is dead. So what do we do now? What should our aim be? You know, many people I've talked to this weekend are still repeating this idea that unify the left. But I'd like to put it to you that left is kind of an amorphous concept. And it includes all kinds of people who self-identify as left but turn out to be a thorn in our side, you know, a viper in our bosom. It's not the left I want to unify, it's the forces for socialism. And sorry, I've said that already. We in the Workers' Party, in fact, increasingly don't identify ourselves as left, because left to us has become synonymous with liberalism, left wing of politics, with identity politics that divide and divert our movement, with all kinds of lifestyleisms that have no connection with the working class, no connection whatsoever with socialism. Of course, anyone who genuinely wants to fight imperialism and work for socialism will agree that workers' only strength is in their numbers, and we therefore have a duty to help them to unify as far as possible, to help the working class to unify. Not the self-identifying left, the working class. We have a different understanding of the path to that unity. We want to go, and we have started to go, to the workers where they are, in their workplaces and the community, and reintroduce them to the notion of class. Not the workers who already identify as left, who already understand that they're in the working class, all the workers, whatever their prejudices, whatever the things they might, the attitudes they might have that some people in here might find uncomfortable. We want to talk to everybody, because if you're working class, your interest is socialism, whether you realise it now or not. Rebuilding class-conscious politics means reminding workers that they are part of a class with definite interests, which are diametrically opposed to the interests of our rulers. It means proving to them that the present system can never solve their problems and winning them to the cause of socialism. It means exposing the lies about Russia, China, Iran, Venezuela, Cuba, etc., 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 which are used to justify imperialist aggression and the drive to ever more and to build wars. It means showing workers that imperialism isn't a foreign policy, as we've talked about earlier from this platform, but an integrated world system of monopoly, fine, and capital. That's what their enemy is. And that the pursuit of maximum profit is driving every one of our rulers' crimes, from the closure of libraries and the destruction of our health service, decimation of our pay, our pensions, our working conditions, to the destruction of Iraq and Libya and the insane drive towards an all-out war with Russia or China or both. Tying these things together, showing people the whole picture, is part of our mission. It means standing up to the lies and slander of the corporate media. We've heard a lot about that this weekend, haven't we? Much of which will also be echoed by parts of the self-identifying left. And recognising that you only get attacked if you're a threat, if you're doing something right. Wear those attacks as a badge of pride, stand up to them and keep going. That's what we have to learn from what happened to Jeremy Corbyn. Most of all, it means convincing workers that they're not helpless victims. They're the ruling class in waiting, the ruling class of a future socialist society. Workers create all the wealth in the present system. That wealth is currently turned against them by the owners of capital. Individually, they're helpless to resist, but with organisation, there is nothing we cannot achieve. We know this. It's the working class who needs to know it, so they can act on it. That's the goal we've set ourselves, to bring back class-conscious political organisation to the British working class and to help it to use its organisational power, its strength in numbers, in its own interests. Yes, we want as many forces as possible to join us, but we're not waiting around. The task is urgent, comrades. The ruling class isn't going to do us any favours. It's not going to give us any publicity if it can get away with it. If it's forced to give us publicity, it will be hostile publicity. It's clear from our result in Batley that there's appetite for a party like ours, for our approach to class politics, and for the clear demarcation that we put between ourselves and the Labour Party. And we make it clear to the working class, not only we are the enemy of the Labour Party, we want to destroy the Labour Party. They have stood in between the working class and socialism for over a century. They need to be destroyed. They are not our friends. We don't want to rebuild an old Labour Party. We want to help the working class organise itself to fight back. Thank you. And we know from the response we get on the doorsteps that there's a desperate need for what we're trying to build. We know the situation for workers is only going to get worse while they remain disorganised and undefended. So the time to be building is now. The more of us who are doing this work, the better will be our success. So please, if you are serious in wanting to help the cause of socialism in Britain, we ask you to join us.
Thanks, Joti. Just one quick point there. I mean, what's the Workers' Party's position on collaborating with other parties of similar ilk?
We're open to discussions, Chris.
Very good. I'm pleased to hear that. There's a comrade at the back there. Let's open it to the floor now then. Somebody was... Oh, sorry, do beg your pardon, Nina. Go on if you want to add something. I do beg your pardon.
Oh, yeah, I can add some from my experience, but just support what you now say, because a lot of people in Germany thought they can maybe change SPD or Labour Party inside. All of them failed. The last are gone. So, yeah, I just want to add, you need an own party. Like you said.
Okay, no, thank you. Well, let's get some comments from the floor then, and what comrades say, and get the views of the panel as well, if you want to. Is that Tony?
Yeah. Thank you, comrades. I agree that we are all, the one thing that unites us is our opposition to the Keir Starmer leadership of the Labour Party, and indeed the historic legacy and record of the Labour Party. However, it's easy to be unified in opposition to something. It's more difficult to unify, to agree what it is you are in favour of. And simply saying we're in favour of socialism begs the question, what is socialism? Historically, there's been a division on the left between, if you like, and I put it quite crudely, between Trotskyism and Stalinism, between revolution in all countries and revolution in one country. And I have to say about the Workers' Party, George Galloway, who's the leader, specifically said that Trotskyists, and I don't consider myself a Trotskyist, but I'm in that tradition, are not welcome in that party. And I particularly object to George and support for the Brexit and Nigel Farage, and I particularly condemn his condemnation of those people who rescued refugees and asylum seekers in Glasgow from the clutches of the immigration squad. I really believe you cannot win the working class to socialism by appealing to the lowest common denominator. And I'll add this in terms of the rhetoric that I've heard from Joti about imperialism. The reason why the United Nations recognized the State of Israel in 1947 was because Stalin's Russia and the East European satellite voted to support a Jewish state, as they called it. Czechoslovakia armed Israel with the most advanced weaponry of the time, including aircraft. That was one of the reasons why the State of Israel emerged. Stalinist policy was absolutely reprehensible, and it was symbolized in the Hitler-Ribbentrop the Hitler-Stalin or the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which actually led to the deportation back into Hitler's clutches of German communists who'd fled to the Soviet Union. I have to say that those members of the Stalin Society, who are also senior members of the Workers' Party, are also not my comrades or allies. And we have to be clear, yes, I am absolutely opposed to what's happened. I was the first Jewish person to be expelled from the Labour Party. But I will not stand arm in arm with people who sent millions of people into the gulags and who actually betrayed the revolution, both in the Middle East and in the wider world. Thank you, comrades.
Although Tony, I mean, obviously it was then, this is now, and we are in new times, aren't we? No, well, that's true, but the latter points, I think, were... I agree with that. But, I mean, are we going to be paralysed by that, though? That's the question. OK. Comrade there.
OK, I don't know much about politics, but what I can say is that the Labour Party weren't standing with the Brexit result, and so I assume George Galloway had to stand with somebody, and that's all I'm going to say on the subject. As for Stalin, I don't know much about him yet, but I actually have quite a fondness from Uncle Joe from what I've read. I don't know, I'm not trying to disagree with you, Tony, I don't know enough about it, but I think there's been so much propaganda over the decades. I have had all this propaganda to me that the Labour Party is fantastic, it's for the workers. It bloody well isn't, and sorry for swearing, and I'm really upset. I'm a proud member of the Workers' Party. I would urge everybody to join it. And I do have problems. I think we're quite a niche audience, as I've mentioned this morning in the Resist corporate media. And I still think my message isn't getting across, that we need to talk to Mrs. X with her cellulitis, or Mr. X who's just had a carotid operation, who is reading The Sun, the Daily Mail, and all the rest of that stuff. Or, oh, Kelly, the weather girl's got a new dress, this is great. They don't give a toss about anything that's happening in the world because they're far too busy being exploited by the capitalists and by the imperialists, and we need to work together on this. We need to forget, we don't need to forget about the past, but we need to think, hang on, how much of this is lies? We know that Jeremy Corbyn's been smeared. We talked about it all weekend. Nobody mentions about George Galloway being smeared or any of us in the Workers' Party being smeared. But as Joti pointed out earlier, the fact that they smear us shows that we're getting somewhere. I'll shut up now, and that's the end.
No, thanks very much. Cheers. Any other comments?
Thank you. Just going to try and bring it away from the Workers' Party for a bit. To discuss the Workers' Party, really, aren't we? For those of you who don't know me, by the way, I'm Kevin. I'm the regional organiser for the North West. I'm speaking on my own behalf at the moment, not on behalf of members of the North West. I think... Sorry? For Resist, sorry. I think come the vote, I'm going to vote against, primarily because I've lost faith in democratic socialism. I know we're not to discuss Labour either, but I'll digress a bit into why. So I joined Labour under Brown when Blair left, and worked for years and years, as we all did, to get that incremental change, Brown to Ed to Corbyn. Loads and loads of incremental changes. We came within inches of success, and then the weight of the establishment came down on us, didn't it? So I don't think anymore we can play there. We can't be a pawn on the chessboard, because if we get near their queen or their king, they'll just flip over the chessboard and stamp us on the throat. So what we need to be doing instead is resisting in the workplace, in the communities, not down south in their parliament, hundreds of miles away, because it's not going to work, in my opinion. We had maybe 200 people here yesterday. If each of us educates 5 people in Marxist theory or alternative, whatever, that's 1,000 people already. We've got a couple of thousand members, something like that, and supporters. Could be tens of thousands in a year's time. Who knows? But each of us needs to agitate our comrades and our colleagues, educate them in Marxist theory and whatever else. Their own oppression, because a lot of people don't even recognise their own oppression. They don't see their own chains. And organise as well. Well, be that trade unions or unofficial committees or whatever, however we can organise. And then, working class are aware of their own power, which at the moment, then I think we can potentially achieve socialism, which isn't going to come from the establishment parliament. It's going to come through the power of the working class. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Conor. I mean, as has always happened, really, all the progressive change that's ever been made, I think, as I was saying yesterday, it's started outside Parliament, and so that's really important. Right, who else is wanting to speak? Was it Candy? Oh no, sorry.
Dawn. Yeah. Where's the microphone again?
Yeah, a lot of talk about an emphasis on workers and unions and you know, and the Labour Party and blah, blah, blah. And the point I was trying to make today, this morning, in the session of Resist for Workers, was it's not just all about workers and unions. You know, if you're going to start a new party, you need to think about, for one thing, diversity. There's a whole swathe of people that are frozen out of the workforce, that have degrees down their neck, like myself, that are completely just shut out because they're different, or it's assumed they can't do this or can't do that because they can't hear too well, or they can't see too well, or they're in a wheelchair, excuse me. And I don't want to hear the D word. I don't want to hear, when it comes to diversity, racism has had a huge platform since George Floyd, and rightfully so. And I'm glad to see that. I mean, I'm American. I grew up with in the post segregation era in the 70s, 80s. So I'm happy to see that, and I support BLM, all of it. Women, obviously, there's an open, it's open season on women, and misogyny seems to be the order of the day. It's all very normalized, and we all know that, with all this stuff coming out from the top to the police on down. And that's all great. But what I'm writing an article about at the moment is the other, the last bastion to be acknowledged within the so-called diversity discourse. And I'm talking about people, i.e. people first, with additional needs. Now, you want to talk about workers and stuff. Well, nobody's talking about pay gap between people that have, no additional needs and people that do. Nobody's talking about discrimination. I mean, discrimination on a daily basis, let alone being able to use their skills. That, hard for at university, and they got, you know, handed pretty much on a platter all the support they need, extra funding, equipment, you know, note takers, blah, blah, blah. I had, you know, all the support I needed at university. The minute you step outside that bubble, well, forget it, you know, that's the real world. And, you know, I had a degree of solidarity when I was in the party. It was right at the end of, well, the last 2 years of, like everybody else, I joined for that reason, because I mean I went to his rallies, blah blah blah, and met him as a student journalist, and he was amazingly approachable, etc., etc. And obviously I resigned last year in disgust. You know, it's an incredible. I mean, I've had a hard time just at this conference from being frozen out of conversations, of tables, of, you know, I don't even have a fucking program, all right? I've had to keep asking questions. I don't have a simple Word document of the speakers. Okay, I can live with that, you know, but, you know, we need the wider issue of diversity. I mean, if we're going to start a party, it's for everybody. It's for workers, but it's for people that frozen out, not of just the workforce, of society, you know, on the margins. You know, you need to think about travelers. It's open season on travelers as well. People with mental health issues are, before COVID, it was bad. Now it's 10 times as bad. The people on the margins, single parents who getting, you know, universal credit cut, you know, it's not just about people, you know, workers. I mean, people, you might want to consider people on council estates and of those groups that I just mentioned, working class. And if you have to have a class, if you have to, you know, draw, you know, make distinctions, then, you know, you need to be careful about that, because then you box people in and, you know, diversity gets to where it doesn't work. You need to think about blurring lines, and, you know, people are people at the end of the day. And there's a hell of a lot of people, huge swathes, like I say, of people that are stigmatized and stuck in the margins. Because even within called progressive movements, there is a hell of a lot to learn. Yeah. And you know, I'm personally sick and tired of, you know, I you know, will talk to anybody. I don't mind talking to people. I'm not answering questions. It's not my mission to educate people when I'm going about my daily life. I mean, I educate people in terms of, you know, the politics, etc., but, you know, and I feel like I do that through what I do in my journalism to the best of my ability. But, you know, I have real reservations with, you know, I'm all for collectivism. That's why I mean I'm a socialist, but that's what socialism is about, collectivism. But collectivism is about people from different groups, from different backgrounds, from different communities coming together and being appreciated and being, really valued for what they add to the whole. That is my understanding, maybe it's a very basic understanding of what socialism is, bettering the whole. And not shoving people aside, and not making people feel like, oh, they constantly need to be sat down, they constantly need to be looked after, they constantly need to be marginalized, because people don't understand difference, okay? Difference, xenophobia, whatever the hell you want to call it. There's a hell of a lot to be learned.
Yeah, well, we're certainly about a lot of consciousness raising is definitely needed. Comrades, we are, I'm told, well behind time, so we'll probably just have a couple more, three, if you can make it brief though, because we are really up against the clock, and then I want to just get the kind of reaction to the panel, and then we'll have a vote. Robin at the back, chat with the beer eventually, but Robin at the back, you, put your hand up, Robin.
Very quickly, the comrade that spoke, I don't think there's anyone in this room that a new Socialist Party is anything other than for the liberation of our working class community. So that includes everybody, nobody, young, old, whether their sexuality, whether they're religious or not, whatever. You know, if you're working class, you may be working, you may be not working, but you're in the same boat at the end of the day. Very quickly, it's a bit spill. When a new Socialist Party is founded, in my opinion, it needs to be at a point where a considerable number of workers in our communities and trade unions have realised the necessity for this to happen and the viability being successful in transforming their lives. Resist, the movement for a workers' party, is the preparation for this new party. We do start with certain favourable conditions. Some of the 200,000 people who have left the Labour Party already want a new Socialist Party. They say that on socialist media. They can be recruited to us now, as we are, because they know our aim is a new Socialist Party in the near future. The question is when. Many of them, many people in this room today, this is favourable conditions for us because they have had a long history in the working class, they're respected for their position in fighting on all the conditions, and they will have a circle of people around them who believe in them, trust them because they are principled and they don't betray. The number of people, potential, I know it's potential, recruits for a new party is bigger than anything in my lifetime. That 200,000, that's a bigger number than potentially looking for a new home. In the 50s, when the Communist Party split, I think we're looking at 20,000 that were looking for a new home. We will recruit newer forces by action involving issues relevant to workers and ones that need sorting out. £15 an hour minimum wage. This is just a couple of what I'm saying. I've been leaving out things. Public ownership under real democratic by and for the workers in the energy companies. Take private profit out, we can lower the prices. It'll be relevant to working class people, it's necessary. In my own area, we have launched a petition for the council to end so-called affordable housing. Instead, our council should borrow the money to build council houses at rents comparable to existing stock, and also using housing cooperatives to lower the cost. We should encourage workers to think about policies that meet their needs. All the time, we encourage workers to believe in themselves to make change. A workers' manifesto coming from our class, for our class.
Oh, you were nearly done, comrade.
Just the last point. Okay. In the end of the day, my suggestion is that we, in a year's time, review where we are in connecting with the working class. That may be the time we actually start founding a new Socialist Party, but we start in preparation now because we exist as a resist.
So basically revisit the decision. Can you just, right at the back, Shamshir, right at the back, and then it's going to have to be fairly brief, Tez, I'm sorry, but...
Yeah, I'm Tez Lewin. My political career has been bookended by Jeremy Corbyn and Chris Williamson, so I've been lucky in that respect. I'm white. I'm now presumed I middle class. My mum was in Dr. Bernardo's, and I think one of my parents was a Romany. So I do feel lots of sympathy with lots of things that have been said. I found this conference fairly depressing, to be quite honestly. I've heard a lot of history, which I've heard so many times before, and I'm not bloody interested quite. I'm interested in the future. And the main thing that is missing from this conference, but which Max just told us about, is the fact that there's a bloody takeover going on now, and they're using a pandemic to do it. We've got several new brand new billionaires who all belong to the pharmaceutical companies. They're getting us off left, right and centre. They're closing down our whole way of life. People haven't been able to bury their own relatives, visit them in hospitals. This is what's going on. And it's happening in lots of places in the world. Look at what's going on in Australia. Now we have Italy. They're talking about general strikes. Max says they're talking about strikes in America. Why isn't that happening here? Because the whole bloody trade union movement was taken over by bureaucracies, as the Labour Party. It's no good thing about setting up another bloody little political party. You just need to calm down a bit, look what's going on in the world, and resist what's going on now. We haven't had hardly any speakers talking about, apart from Bob Gill, who's done a fantastic job telling us how our NHS has been taken away from us because it's gone already. When are people going to fucking well wake up?
Last two speakers, sorry to get you rushing around, but right at the front here.
last word as well. Can you hear me?
I can.
Right, I should be as brief as possible. The answer to the question is yes, which is on the sheet. But we must have, we've got a room full of all like-minded people. We've got 2 other parties already here represented. What I'd like to see is resist, yes, be a political party, but a collaboration of all the left. All I've heard this weekend is solidarity, solidarity, stick together, and that's what we need. On a negative note, and I did tell Dave Nellis this, I don't think Tusk is a right name for, because it means nothing to hundreds of thousands of people. So what we really need is something like, I see down there, the People's Party as the umbrella. Yeah. And in that respect, people know we can either keep our own name under that umbrella, Georgia's party can be under that umbrella, but that's what we need. We need to be a political party. We need as many inlets for recruitment as possible. People, in our local areas, people can, visit that site and join. But we need that umbrella. We need you, we need George, we need Dave Nellis to agree probably 6 or 7 points that we all agree on for a main manifesto.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, just Natalie there, and then I'll just get a reaction from the panel, and then we'll have a vote.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm a little bit torn as to whether we should start a new party or not, but I definitely think we need to continue either way to develop a movement. I think one of the things that's really important for us to do is to, obviously unity has to be at the centre of everything and solidarity, but we need on the left to develop our emotional intelligence a little bit about what informs behaviour, because I think this gets in the way so often. We've become very good at each other and not very good at listening and learning to speak, and I think we need to return to that, because if we don't do that, we're going to destroy ourselves. And I think that the right have been very good about uniting around hate and uniting around protecting the status quo, and we've got to do bloody better at uniting on the left around values and just understanding the issues that people are kind of facing today. So I think, first of all, I just want to say that, because that is so important about understanding when people are operating out of fear, which is what the system has driven us to. Our critical thinking and reasoning goes. All of these other things go. So we need to find a way of learning to speak to pull people out of that and support in whatever way we can, because then we can start having conversations rather than labelling people left, right and centre. Identity politics is whipped our asses, and we need to understand that. That doesn't mean giving up values, but it's understanding that we're all works in progress. So I think unity is really important, but I just want to state one thing that I have a concern with this, and it's not to attack anyone. I just want to highlight that, because I am so in unity and understanding all of these things. My concern, if I'm honest, and this is about George Galloway, and it's not to attack anyone, I just want to highlight that, but the decision that he made in terms of having any kind of alliance with Nigel Farage and Steve Bannon, and that is toxic. I don't know the guy. I find him quite misogynistic. When he gets challenged, he does tend to block. And this is not to attack everybody who's part of that party, but we need to understand what that is. Nigel Farage is a white supremacist and a neo-Nazi. Steve Bannon is a white supremacist and a neo-Nazi. We have to understand that baggage and what it means. So if we're going to move forward, because it damaged us, and that's what I found really, really difficult. And it's not to attack, like I said, it's not questioning all the other people involved in that, but we have to understand what that means. You never, ever, at any point in history, form alliances for any fucking reason. I'm sorry, with neo-Nazis.
Right, just then, as the panel are giving their reactions, could everybody with a pink wristband just make yourselves known, because John's going to just hand out some little voting slips for you. Joti, do you want to just give a brief reaction to what you've heard, and then we'll go down the line and finish?
I mean, since it has to be brief, I'm not going to give you guys all a lesson in history. I would ask, consider why it is there's such hate campaign against George Galloway, whipped up on social media, no doubt by Brigade 77 among others. It's because he's doing something right. It's because he's able to bring anti-imperialist politics to working class people. He speaks beyond the left to the working class at home and internationally very successfully. That is why he is attacked and demonised, and we should understand that. He fought for Brexit. He didn't fight for Nigel Farage. He fought for Brexit, which was a working class demand, which is a socialist demand. He fought for it in order for it to be passed. He was correct to do that. Just so you know, Tony Benn sat on a platform with Enoch Powell in the last round of European referendum campaigning. He didn't, he agreed with Enoch Powell, anything else apart from the European Union, okay? It's exactly the same thing. If we allow our rulers to scare us off of being on platforms and talking to people because they have the wrong opinions, we will cut ourselves off from the people we need to talk to. I will talk on anybody's platform because I've got something to say I think they need to hear. Can I
Yeah, well, another minute, Joti.
What I want people to ask themselves is there anything in the Workers' Party's 10-point programme with which you disagree? We want to intervene meaningfully in elections, and we've shown that we can do it. We'll do it better if you join with us. We want to build a real grassroots organisation that's in touch with local communities. I think these are the things that you guys want to do too. We started as Project Corbyn was collapsing because we could see the need for the new party already. We want you to join us, and I don't think there's anything about what we've done that is hostile to any of your aims. Let's just do it together.
Matt, are you still with us? Do you have any comments from the discussion that we've had?
I'm with you, thank you, and I'm learning a lot here about British politics. It's a lot more alive. I can tell you just from watching this conversation, your left politics or socialist politics are much more alive than ours here. I'll quickly comment on the Trotskyist versus Stalin question, and then one of the final comments. I'm not a Stalinist. I'm more of a Groucho Marxist because I'll be part of any club that will have me. And I would go on speaking tours organized by the Trotskyist groups in the United States, specifically the ISO, the International Socialist Organization, which is now defunct. And these talks can Palestine, they're Palestine solidarity events, and they would turn out very large crowds back when crowds used to gather in the good old days. And I had no problem with the fact that the ISO is a Trotskyist organization. And you know, neither did the Marxist-Leninists who get called tankies or Stalinists, because we all agree on Palestine regardless of what happened in 1947 or 48, when actually, by the way, the Soviet Union only supporting Resolution 181, not the establishment of a Jewish state, which the Communist Party, which was Arab and Jewish in Israel, did not support either. So it wasn't the Stalinists who started attacking or dividing. It was when I came out and said that I was disgusted with the dirty war on Syria and with all of the deceptions around the white helmets, and I began to expose it in using my media platform, that these Trotskyist organizations started to come after me and issue these letters of denunciation and personally attack me and anyone who opposed the U.S. plan for regime change in Syria, which was part of a wider program that began with Iraq and would have ended with regime change in Iran, something Israel would have celebrated. And so I had to start questioning these organizations and what they were about. I've seen them do the same on China, promoting the lies of the State Department to gin up a new Cold War. I've seen them do the same with the Russiagate hysteria, and it really causes me to question what their true agenda is, because they're so often echo State Department propaganda. And for me, I want more unity within left or socialist organizations, but we can't have unity when actual anti-imperialists are attacked with these bizarre and boutique arguments that constantly echo national security state propaganda. And you know, that's my feeling on that one. I never thought of myself as a Stalinist, but I just find the attacks to be a little bit um, a little bit ridiculous at this point. And we've seen what happened in Syria. Uh, the dirty war has ended, and so has the bloodletting. And we were told constantly that if Assad won the war, that he would go and commit genocide on the Sunnis. Well, that's not happening, and the region is starting to try to come together again. So whoever opposed me and others, critics of the dirty war, they've been proven wrong, and they need to be held accountable. Then there was a gentleman who talked about the ongoing resistance right now. Well, what we're witnessing right now, and I'll talk about the United States, is indeed a controlled demolition of the economy and an abandonment by our feudal lords of the moribund liberal democratic system. And they do intend to bring in a system of the variety that Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum has articulated, what he calls a great reset. So in August in the United States, we saw about 3% of the entire workforce quit their jobs because they couldn't take it anymore. Who are they? These are the frontline workers. They're not the laptop class that enjoys being on Zoom calls and is able to order food and goods to their homes all day and likes being under lockdown. These are people who were exhausted by the lockdowns, who are sick of wearing masks for 8 hours a day, who are sick of being told by their bosses that there's a new restriction today different from the last one, healthcare workers who are sick of putting their health in danger every day, people who are bombarded with fear through the media, and they just can't take it anymore. And this plays into the wider agenda of the World Economic Forum, which is automating the workforce, replacing the workers with automation. You will have telemedicine visits, and learning will be phased out, and students will learn through Zoom. The big tech tools will be required by everyone, which is a boon for the tech billionaires who are feudal overlords. And maybe people in capitalist society get a kind of universal basic income, which can be cut off at any point because it will all be digital if you don't obey your mandates. That's why this issue of mandates is so important, and why the issue of passports is so important, because the passports will be digitized. And as we've seen in India, where there has been a social credit system enacted, the passport, your biomedical status will be linked to your digital currency wallet and your biometric data, and you will be denied access to society if you fail to comply. That is just clearly where this is all going. And I think that's really why people, for example, the dock workers in Trieste in Italy, are rising up against the Green Pass. The philosopher Giorgio Agamben testified before the Italian Senate against the Green Pass 2 weeks ago. And Agamben said that the point of the Green Pass is not to encourage mass vaccination, it's the other way around. That mass vaccination is being pushed to require the Green Pass, because the Green Pass and its in digital form will represent the most important step on the way to this kind of digital totalitarian control that our feudal masters want to put into place, which really makes the kind of socialism, workers' movement, people power that we're talking about here next to impossible. And so resistance is ongoing right now. It is in the streets. It is a major moment for us to seize. Millions of workers every month in the U.S. are quitting. The supply lines are being are down. Our transportation secretary has been on paternity leave since August. It's a major opportunity for workers' movement to arise and to build towards a general strike. So we need to get past the factional divisions and start getting involved in what's currently taking place, because people are resisting largely without leadership.
Yeah, thanks, Max. Thanks very much, Max, for your thoughts and insights, and thanks very much for sticking with us and contributing to our discussion. Nina, any feedback and thoughts on what you've heard?
Yeah, I want to warn you a bit to, because Germany lost half of the power in the last 4 years. We lost 1 million voters, we came down from 10 to 5%, and we are just lucky we are still in the parliament. And I want to warn you, because I think we gave some discussions too much space, and we discussed it too personally and not on facts. So don't forget, it's not you ask to give an answer for any question in this universe. Yeah, especially as long you are in the opposition. So I want to give you the tip: make priorities that all of you can accept and work on these priorities together.
I think there's a lot of support for that thought, Nina. Thank you indeed for that. Closing thoughts.
Yeah, it's been very interesting discussion. I just wanted to comment on the comrade from the Northwest who said, I think at this stage we should just focus on local community campaigning, resisting at local level. Because I think we've all got sympathy with that idea. And Socialist Party branches up and down the country, like I'm sure you are involved in anti-eviction campaigns, supporting workers facing fire and rehire, loads of other concrete issues. The only question I'd pose to you is, if you build campaigns on those issues and then people implementing some of those evictions, if they're from local authority properties, or carrying out fire and rehire if it's the local council employees, are up for election next May, don't you think there's going to be a case to stand against them? So that's just my argument on the other side on that. Obviously, there are differences between us. It's been interesting. The Socialist Party is a Trotskyist organisation and definitely has disagreements on history and world events, which I'm not going to go into, don't worry. No, indeed. But also on more recent things. We campaigned for Brexit, not on a nationalist basis, but because we think the EU is a boss's club. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that we think it's right to appear, as I'm afraid I felt George did a bit, uncritically alongside Farage. And I don't think it was okay to call for a vote for Tories tactically in Scotland. So, you know, we have differences. But one thing I agree with Joti said was the importance that this is not just about getting the left together. It's useful for us to get together and talk about stuff, but that's not the main point. What we need is a workers' party, a mass workers' party in this country, and us talking on our own is not going to get that. Not going to get into name debates. I'm not saying Tusk is the perfect name. It's not. It has one advantage. Sorry. It's got the name, but it's got the name trade union in it. And unions in this country, for all the faults of their leadership, represent 6.5 million workers. The big mass organisations in this country. Tusk doesn't have the support of all them at all, but it does have the official support of the RMT with 80,000 members, and that gives it a bit of muscle, as well as I was trying to add up, I think 8 members of union executives who at the moment are there in a personal capacity. And then the very last thing I would say is, yes, it's true that we want to build up the working class, not just get left unity, but we also achieve by just saying we've done it. You know, we can say in the Socialist Party we've got 2,000 members, we're the answer, but it's not true, is it? We want to be the answer. I don't want a repeat of the Labour Party. I would like a new mass workers' party to have the programme of the Socialist Party. But you don't get it just by saying it. We have to work together, collaborate, build something new, and not drop our differences. We can keep arguing about them at the same time, but fight together on the class politics that we agree about. So there is a limit. At the board as New Labour, we do not want people who vote for austerity in any electoral, but we unite on those basic things. We keep arguing about ideas, but we set out to build roots in the working class, but also to fight electorally for the working class, and that is really what you're discussing today. You'll do that as part of Tusk, but I think that we should collaborate on whatever basis you do it, just as Tusk is still discussing it, but the Socialist Party, despite our many differences, would like to discuss with the Workers' Party about what electoral collaboration is possible, because We want to maximise the possible unity on a principled basis at every stage, so we make the working class electoral voice as strong as we can.
Right, thank you. Alexei, closing comments. You've got to sum it all up now.
Yeah, thanks for that. Well, that was interesting. Yeah, I came to learn as well as to speak. So I spoke about old modes of behaviour. I think we've seen some of those here. I think if you've got to get over those to have any chance of success, really, I think that's the long and the short of it, really. The factionalism has always been a problem in the left. And you've got to find some way around that. I also think that talk about organisational modes. I think one of the most interesting organisations, which is highly effective in its way, is Alcoholics Anonymous. And anybody who shares in Alcoholics Anonymous gets to speak exactly 3 minutes and no more. Might be an idea for that too.
Well, maybe that's a standing order. We should adopt them and call it the Sayle Protocol or something like that. Maybe. Was that your conclusion? That was it.
Yeah,
that was it. Well, the Sayle Protocol. That was
I can't keep talking since I've criticised.
Yes, absolutely. I understand. Thank you so much. Right. Okay. Well, look, this is an indicative vote. What we said that we'd get an indicative vote at today's meeting. But a lot of people who aren't here and some people who were here have not been able to stop. Some people came yesterday and couldn't come today. So we wanted to have that opportunity to get an indicative vote here to sort of see what the sense was. But we are going to go out to a wider consultation to see whether the wider membership feel we should start the process to register. And so can I just ask you to please show whether you favour us starting the process to register as a political party. Please hold up your card. Oh, hang on. Well, I know he's having 2 bloody cards.
Green for yes. Red for no. Yellow for abstain.
Oh, so we can do it all in one go. Well, this is efficiency. Alexei will agree with that. Right. Stick it up then. Green if you agree. Yellow if you don't know, and red if you're against. Right. Who's going to count these? Can we ever tell? Yeah, you're going to count them. Well done. I ain't got to bother with it. Thank you. Do the Greens have it?
I think, yeah, they do.
The Greens have it. That's the indicative vote then, by the looks of it, that we should hear. So that can then go out to the wider membership. That was the indicative vote at the never mind. Well, we know I don't need the numbers. We know that the Greens won it. Okay, well that brings the proceedings to a conclusion. Thank you everybody for giving us your time, participating, and letting us have the benefit of your thoughts. Can we please have a round of applause to show our appreciation to all the speakers? And notwithstanding the difficulties that we were confronted with when we arrived on Friday, I think we should give a round of applause to show our appreciation for Hassan, who has very kindly let us use this venue for our conference, and particularly for the wonderful vegan food that was presented to us all. Because remember, comrades, the vegans will inherit the earth. I also want to thank the steering committee for their support and work that they put in throughout the year and in organising the event today. Let's say a big thank you to our techie people who are absolutely brilliant, I think. Thank you. We move swiftly past a round of applause for the steering committee. Would people like to applaud the committee? Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. And I want to just say a particular thanks to all of you, because you have made it possible. Thank you for your and everything. So give yourselves a round of applause. And then finally, I would like to pay a particular tribute to Sian Bloor, who is our national coordinator, and she's been And I said thanks to the steering committee, obviously, we all chipped in. I know that, comrade. I'm having sort of words in my ear. I know that, don't worry. You're stealing my bloody thunder now, mate, yeah. All chipped in, and we all did as best we could to try and pull this together, but the person that's been the real brain behind it and who's put in most effort is Sean. And so, Sean, please come forward, because we've got a token of our appreciation for you, and we want you to come up and have your photograph taken, and keep applauding until she gets to the stage. Keep applauding. Thank you very much indeed. Here she is, comrades. John Law. It's the Oscars, just sort of say something.
I'm really embarrassed now. Thank you very much. It has been hard work, but I think it's been worth it, and worth it to meet all of you. I've spoken to most of you on Zoom throughout the last years, and it's great to finally get to meet everybody face to face. It's been a brilliant atmosphere. It's been really warm, really friendly, and I hope that we can take something forward from now on, and let's continue to build this movement, whichever way we decide to go, whether it's electorally or whether it's carry on building this resistance. So solidarity, and let's keep going.
Thank you, Sean. And I think that draws the proceedings to an end. Let's just remember what Tony Benn once said: there are two flames that burn in the human heart, comrades. The flame of anger against injustice, and the flame of hope that we can build a better world. And that's our job, comrades, to go out and build a better world. So thank you very much indeed. See you on the campaign trail. Thank you, mate.